And so now all the jobs have been filled. And I want to start out by giving credit to NFL Network reporter Stacey Dales, who is a former WNBA All-Star, an Olympian, and she now is a reporter for NFL Network. And she went right up to Seahawks offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak right after the game as the confetti just fell. And she's asking him, like, hey, how you feeling? Is this your last game with the Seahawks? Because all the reports leading up to it was that the Raiders were locking in on hiring Clint Kubiak, that they were negotiating a 5-year contract. How much money are they going to pay him? All this and that, but it didn't officially become official until the Seahawks season came to an end, as he wanted to show respect to the mission that his current team was on. And so shout out to Stacey Dales, because she got that report on the record. She got him to confirm, yeah, I'm going to Vegas. And so now all the head coaching vacancies have been filled. So for those of you who may not be keeping up over the last month or so, this is a quick rundown, and then we're each going to give our prediction for who will be the most successful from this hiring class and who will be the least successful. So starting out, the Falcons hired Kevin Stefanski after he got fired by the Browns. That's a head scratcher in itself. Jesse Minter got hired by the Baltimore Ravens away from the Los Angeles Chargers, where he was the defensive coordinator. You have Jeff Hafley, who was with the Packers. I believe he was their defensive coordinator, and now he got hired as the Dolphins head coach. That was a big head scratcher for me, just kind of alluding to what I'm going to be talking about later. John Harbaugh got hired by the New York Football Giants after being with the Ravens for a very long time. Bob Saleh, Toddy and I's guy, former defensive coordinator, two-time defensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers. He is now moving on to another head coaching opportunity. Hopefully this one goes better, as he's now with the Tennessee Titans, building a bit of an all-star cast on his coaching staff as well. The Pittsburgh Steelers replaced their longtime head coach, Mike Tomlin, with another Mike, another Super Bowl winning coach, Mike McCarthy. And I thought it was kind of special just because Mike McCarthy is a yinzer to his core. And so him getting that job meant a lot to him. If you haven't seen the press conference, check it out. As we talked about earlier, the Buffalo Bills hired Joe Brady, who was their offensive coordinator, which is really interesting because the owner was saying that the coaching staff was the problem. They fired Sean McDermott, but apparently the guy who was right under him wasn't. We'll get to that a little bit later. Todd Monken got hired as the Cleveland Browns' next head coach, which led to Jim Schwartz leaving. Jim Schwartz, who was their defensive coordinator, thought he had a chance to get that job. Instead, they go with Todd Monken, who was the Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator. Then he agreed to become the Giants offensive coordinator with John Harbaugh until the Browns decided to make them their head coach. As we just talked about, Stacey Dales confirmed the report that Clint Kubiak is going to be the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders after being the offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks. And Mike LaFleur, brother of Matt LaFleur, Packers head coach, he got hired as the Arizona Cardinals head coach after being an offensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams. So that's all the moves. Jaevon, I'm going to start it off with you. Let's go around the panel one time and talk about who we think will be most successful. So for you, Jaevon, after all those coaches I just named off, who do you think will have the most success 10 years from now when we're looking back on this massive hiring class? Because it's not often that we get coaches being hired and fired in the double digits. So who do you think will be the most successful from all these guys in the future?
Yeah, a lot of turnover. There's a couple of coaching jobs that I think we'll probably see a lot of guys kind of turning around. The best I'll probably say is Jesse Minter from that's going to come from the Chargers, going to the Ravens. Guy came from the McDonald tree, so you might see something similar. I think the one thing with the Ravens is what they've been missing is their defense hasn't been what we've known them being when they had Ed Reed, when they had Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, all those guys. I think Mitchell can bring that same tenacity, ferociousness back to this Ravens defense. And you have a guy, I don't know, Lamar Jackson who's won 2 MVPs, all pros, Derrick Henry, Hall of Fame running back in the backfield. You got guys like Zay Flowers, who have already been putting up points. I think they averaged 30 points this year. And you can bring that in with and Minter can add to the defensive prowess that McDonald brings to what Seattle has, and you bring that to Baltimore, that could be very scary and has a lot of potential. Obviously, Bob Saleh, I think he can definitely have an ultimate impact. One thing he said in his press conference was he wasn't calling plays in New York when he was the head coach, which I thought was kind of weird. I didn't know that. I didn't know that Ulbrich was calling the defensive plays. He was kind of more of a CEO head coach. You had him, and then you had Dayball, who before Dayball was hired as a head coach, once upon a time did get Daniel Jones to the playoffs. Let's not forget that. And then he was Josh Allen's OC when Josh Allen wasn't really Josh Allen yet. He was the OC for the Bills, and that ended up ultimately getting the head coaching job for the Giants, where he was later obviously fired. So I think that that OC DC combo can be basically what the Titans need. Obviously, the Titans need a lot more, like better players. But I think when you have a guy in Cam Ward, you got guys like a big Jeff Simmons on the D line, All Pro Jeff, and if you can have a solid draft and maybe a good free agency. I mean, Titans aren't really paying anybody, so they can bring guys in. And you can combine Salah and Dayball, you can have a lot of success. Another team that a lot of people aren't really going to look at is I think the Raiders can be that question mark team. Obviously, they're going to add. You're going to add Fernando Mendoza to this roster. Let's just say, call spade a spade. Fernando Mendoza is going to be a Las Vegas Raider. You can look back 2 months later from now. Oh, you see the future. We all saw what we saw in that playoff run from Indiana. So you add a guy in Mendoza, and you have a guy already in position with Ashton Genty in the backfield. You have guys like Trey Tucker on the outside. Obviously, you have Brock Bowers, who, when healthy, is probably the best tight end in football. And you add a Kubiak to this system, that offense can probably change overnight. Now, there is another side of the football that the Raiders have to address, and they got to tear it all the way down from scratch. You probably, according to reports, Jay Glazer, very trusted source, Max Crosby is probably going to be gone. So I would imagine you'd get a bunch of picks from Max Crosby, and you use those draft picks on the defensive side of the ball. Similar to the Titans, the Raiders are not paying anybody. You can retool that offensive line. We saw with the Bears this year. Ben Johnson came in day one. We're getting this guard. We're getting the center. We're getting this tackle. They retooled their offensive line in one offseason. And we saw what it did for their run game. It did absolute wonders. Now, Ashton Genty, very high draft pick, had the absolute worst offensive line. Like, it couldn't be any worse. It was me, you, Mac, and Emiliano out there blocking for Ashton Genty. So I feel like with this offseason, they should use this to tool their O-line, probably go into the draft, get a bunch of guys. And defense is something that they will need to rely heavily on. You probably might sign some guys in the offseason on the outside for receiver's sake, but you have Brock Bowers. So I think the Raiders probably won't be a playoff team, but I think that they'll pop a little bit more with their offensive prowess, getting a guy in Kubiak. You have Fernando Mendoza, you have a Brock Bowers, and you have Ashton Genty. So I think that if you can retool your offensive line, you might see a little bit of a pop from an offensive standpoint. I don't know how good their whole team will be because your defense has to be good for you to be a successful team. But I feel like their offense will be retooled pretty immensely when you get an offensive head coach in. I will add one more thing. I'm probably taking up the whole entire time. I think the Giants are going to be good. I think Harbaugh's a really good coach. The Giants have been starving for stability, and I feel like they haven't gotten that since Eli was there. I mean, even when Daniel Jones was there, they had the 1 year with Daniel Jones and Brian Daboll. They had that 1 year, but ever since then, it's kind of just been a ghost. Don't really know what's going on. I do love the Giants front four. Similar to Seattle, they have a really good front four. You have guys like DeMarcus Lawrence, or not DeMarcus Lawrence. They have the Giants' front four, I think their defense is really solid. I think offensively, they have a couple of things they could probably could work on, but obviously you have Jackson Dart and you have a Cam Scatterboo that can make plays for you offensively. And like I said, similar to the Giants, I think Harbaugh can obviously they pretty much every single year when he was with the Ravens, they were in the playoffs. So the Giants were like, yeah, I'll take that. You say we can get into the playoffs every year? I'm starving for that. So I think the Giants will be good. Kevin's probably I've told Kevin this. I was like, your guys' division got better overnight. Obviously Kevin is the Eagles fan, so I don't know if the NFC East will be as easy of a path as it's been for them the last couple of years. Obviously they won Super Bowl last year. So yeah, those are the kind of the teams that I see to be that can probably make something happen.
Emiliano, how about you? Who do you think will be the most successful head coaching candidate from this cycle?
Yeah, I was gonna go with the Raiders. I'll be honest. I think that more than anything, what the Raiders have needed for a really long time is some stability and culture. And so, we don't know what Clint Kubiak's going to be like as a head coach in Las Vegas, but I think, they're. I was looking at their roster and their salary over the next couple of years, and just based on players that they're going to have signed, through 2028, they're going to turn over that entire roster in the next couple of years. Guys like Max Crosby, who have been a staple of the Raiders for a really long time, even guys like Colton Miller, who's been a standout tackle for them over the last 6+ years, I believe, are not going to be there by the time they sign Fernando Mendoza's first non-rookie contract. So I think the Raiders have the greatest chance 5 years from now. We look back, QBX, maybe one of the best signings. I definitely don't want to underestimate what the Titans are doing. I think, Cam Ward, was a part of a draft class that got a lot of hate, and so I think that, he kind of flew under the radar a little bit. Not saying that, he was standout or anything, but I just think, again, culture really is everything right now. Being able to build a culture around some of these players that are coming in, already being millionaires is kind of one of the bigger things that I look for in a head coach at this point. And I think Saleh maybe has a chance to do that. He got the short end of the stick with the Jets for a lot of reasons, and so I think the Titans and the Raiders a few years from now are going to be the two that we look back on, and maybe the only two that are still coaching there. With how things turn around so fast in the NFL, who knows?
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. And Mac, for you, who do you think is going to be most successful from this hiring cycle? I have one guy who has already been mentioned that I could guess you may believe will be successful. But as we were talking about on last week's episode, I was not a believer in Mike McDonald at all. And we see the result. So who are you predicting will be successful from this cycle the most?
For me, I'm looking at who the person hired is, like what their path is from, but not only that, but where they're landing in, what team is best positioned to have sustained long term success. And for me, the two that line up perfectly is Jesse Minter going to the Ravens. I think you look there, how bad the defense was, and that was a big part of the reason why they didn't make the playoffs this year. They had a lot of injuries on the offensive side of the ball. You probably need to get Lamar another wide receiver, maybe one that has reliable hands apart from Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews, but that's neither here nor there. But I feel like the Ravens, when they moved on from Jar Harbaugh, I felt like, okay, this is the best opening in the National Football League. And so whoever gets this is going to be best positioned to go forward into the future. And I think you look at what Chargers defense coordinator, it doesn't sound all that hype when you hear it, but when you look at his tree and you look at how long he's been on the defensive side of the ball, and when you look at the candidates that were out there, there wasn't exactly a blow you away candidate this cycle, right? There wasn't somebody I guess you could say Harbaugh, but obviously you're the Ravens, so that doesn't really count for you. But there wasn't really somebody everybody was falling over themselves to get, at least not until later in the cycle. And so I feel like Minter is best positioned to have sustained long-term success. I am interested to see what Kubiak does with the Raiders because they've got, a good foundation to work off of. They're going to have their franchise quarterback should he elect to take him. If not, they can fall back and collect a boatload of picks for future seasons. So I am curious to see how that one works out too. The person I think will have the least amount of success or the most trouble, honestly, my pick is going to go to Mike McCarthy because I don't know what the Steelers were thinking choosing to succeed Mike Tomlin with Mike McCarthy. I think Mike McCarthy is a decent coach. I mean, we saw the work he did with the Cowboys. It was good, but not enough to get over the hump. Obviously, I think Dallas made the right choice in letting his contract expire and trying to move on to somebody else. Whether Schottenheimer's the right option, well, I watched him in Seattle, so I would say no. But, I understand the decision, why they did what they did. But I don't understand it from the Steelers. I think if you wanted to move on, well, it wasn't their decision to move on, obviously. Tomlin stepped down. But if you're going to go into this change, this was your opportunity to do something radical, do something interesting to kind of generate interest and buzz and potentially go in a different direction. Mike McCarthy feels like a lesser version of Mike Tomlin to me, and I don't foresee him being there for that long, and I don't see them having that level of success either.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm rooting for Mike McCarthy just because I think it's a nice storyline, but everything you just said, Mac, was very valid. And they're excuse me, they're basically running it back from Green Bay 15 years ago, and it got them one Super Bowl, but probably should have resulted in a lot more. And that's if Aaron Rodgers even returns, because that's the biggest question mark now. When it comes to who I think will be the most successful, and forgive me, guys, if my memory isn't serving correctly, but a name that I was surprised to not hear was Kevin Stefanski with the Atlanta Falcons, because he was a 2-time Coach of the Year in Cleveland of all places. And we're talking Cleveland football. Toddy, did you mention Kevin Stefanski? Did I miss that?
No, I was just going to say your quarterback is injured again, and he has both ACLs repaired. Who's your quarterback?
That's what the NFL draft is for, because the news just came out that they are moving on from Kirk Cousins. They will be releasing him when the new league year starts. So they're going to try to start the transition of getting off of his contract. I believe that there will still be some dead money there, but they're starting the transition. When it comes to Michael Penix, it's unfortunate. Like it's remarkable that he even made it to the NFL and was a top 10 pick after suffering multiple ACL injuries in college. And so kudos to him for making it from Indiana to Washington to the NFL. I'm happy that he even got to this point. He's earned some generational money for his family. When it comes to his NFL future, that is very uncertain. But we talked about the Raiders with the fact that, okay, they're drafting a quarterback. They already have a dynamic running back. They already have a dynamic tight end. I'm not saying that Kyle Pitts is Brock Bowers, but Bijan Robinson is arguably the best running back in the NFL. When they had Arthur Smith, the FedEx nepotism hire, everyone was just waiting. Hey, and I shouldn't be talking
like that.
Tony, I realized it right after it came out of my mouth. I was like, I got to stop talking shit about that guy because now he's the Buckeyes offensive coordinator. But when Arthur Smith was the head coach in Atlanta, like everyone was just waiting for him to unlock that offense. And then they decide to hire a defensive coach from Los Angeles in Raheem Morris. And Raheem Morris, like, he kind of fumbled the bag this year. Like, the opportunities were there. They had a really bad stretch in the middle of the season that did them in, because then they end up finishing tied for winning the division. But because of the tiebreakers that happened earlier in the season, there was no chance of them winning the division in the last game, even though they won their last game. And they're the reason why the Buccaneers didn't. But my point is, you have a guy like Bijan Robinson and Mac and Vaughn's guy, Drake London from USC, Kyle Pitts, he started to come alive this season. I will never forget. It was like week 13, something like that, Thursday Night Football, and he dropped a 40-piece on my bench because it's been years of not believing in him. I'm just saying, if anyone will unlock the offensive pieces that this Falcons team has, I believe in Kevin Stefanski, because Kevin Stefanski found a way to have success in Cleveland. We talk a lot about the New York Jets and how they almost ruined Sam Darnold and plenty of other players along the way. Cleveland has been the place where football careers, I will say, where football careers have gone to die for years, even before the Browns moved to Baltimore. And so the Browns should have never let Stefanski go in the first place. They realized that once they were trying to even interview candidates. And a guy like Mike McDaniel says, I'd actually rather go be an offensive coordinator in Southern California than even take a second interview for your position, because I don't need my second opportunity to end up flaming out because it's in Cleveland and then I don't get another shot. I'm just saying, Kevin Stefanski, to me, is an underrated hiring. I know he was one of the first guys to get hired in this cycle, but I think Kevin Stefanski in Atlanta is a bit of a sleeper. I'm also a believer in John Harbaugh in New York, Cam Scatterbo, Rio Linda, California, Jackson Dart, if he can learn to slide. And obviously Malik Neighbors, who Emiliano, was it you who had a Malik Neighbors on your fantasy football team in my league, and you put him on the trade block after he got hurt, and everyone was like wondering what happened? Why is Malik Neighbors? And then I saw 5 minutes later, I was like, torn ACL. That's why he did it.
Come get him discount rate.
Yeah, it's not dynasty. But yeah, I'm a believer in the Giants, and I'm rooting for my guy Robert Saleh. I think that he was one of the many people who fell victim to the New York Jets, and so I'm rooting for Bob Saleh. I think John Harbaugh will be successful in New York, New Jersey, and Stefanski to me is an underrated hiring. And as Grey Wolf, Mac and I are probably the only ones who will understand this reference, but it's a WWE reference. As Grey Wolf, good to see you. We see you in the comments after a couple weeks. We appreciate you tuning in. Grey Wolf says, say his name and he appears. I believe in Stefanski. And as Mac clapped, because that there's a guy in WWE now. He used to be in TNA. His name is Joe Hendry. That's his gimmick. You say his name, he appears. I believe in Joe Hendry. Nevertheless, keeping things moving, because I know we are running out of time now. I wanted to say real quickly, I'm not a believer in Jeff Hafley. I didn't understand that hiring, especially when you go from a guy like Mike McDaniel to Jeff Hafley. I don't get that. And maybe this is just me being a hater within the division. He could end up being a tremendous coach, but I'm not really a believer in Mike LaFleur either. The Cardinals just have not had success for a very long time. We saw how elite the NFC West was this past season, and Mike LaFleur was part of that as he was in LA with the Rams. But the Cardinals just seem to muck it up constantly. And every team in the division started 2-0. Cardinals fell off a cliff after that. I think it's going to be very challenging for Mike LaFleur in Arizona, because I was a believer in Jonathan Gannon when the Cardinals hired him, and we saw how that worked out. So I'm not a believer in Jeff Hafley. I'm not a believer in Mike LaFleur. Emiliano, who are you not a believer of?
I got to go against you. I'm not huge on the Falcons. I think Stefanski is a great coach, but I just think the Falcons have made a few too many poor GM decisions. They don't have a first-round pick this year. They don't have a first-round pick next year, I believe. They traded both of those. It's hard to protect your stud RB, your stud receiver, and your stud tight end without first-round picks to develop offensive line, defensive line. Shout out to our Eagles fans, O-line, D-line, Howie. I just think that that's how teams are built, and it appears that they've taken a swing and a miss on a couple of their edge rushers over the past couple of years. So I just think, all credit to Stefanski for winning Coach of the Year, but you had Myles Garrett, you had a legit DB core, some great linebackers, and I think that you're leaving that and you're going to a much worse roster overall. I know that might sound like a lot considering how bad the Browns are, but yeah, I just don't believe in the Falcons whatsoever.
Also,
That's
shout
fair.
out Terry Fontenot, the former Falcons GM, who traded this year's first last year for James Pierce, who is now facing charges.
Oh boy.
Yeah, as he decided to hit his beautiful WNBA star girlfriend, Rakia Jackson. She was in her car. He was in his car. He decided to hit her car with his car. And I think I saw that he also fled police. So
Yes,
that's a great move.
Probably gonna get released.
Yeah, and
think-
it's crazy because he was a finalist for Defensive Rookie of the Year, and now we see what has happened. Toddy, real quickly, do you have time to tell us who you think will be the worst, or do you got to get out of here? I know you had a hard out.
I think it's probably Todd Monken. I mean, if you just look at all the people that tried to become the Browns head coaching job, everybody that they were interviewing, they're like, I'm good. I'll be OC. I'm good. I'll go be a DC over here. Like, there were people that were bowing out, like Stefanski even bowed out of or not Stefanski. I forgot. I think I already said McDaniel. He bowed out of the head coaching position. So it was kind of just like, somebody please take this job. And everybody was like, I don't know. I think Jimmy Haslam just can't get in his own way. Like, he's just gonna meddle at some point in time, going into it. So, I mean, if you look at their defense was really good. Amelia already mentioned. You had obviously Myles Garrett break the sack record. You had, you have guys like Denzel Ward on the outside, Shador Sanders, obviously. Really like the running back room as well. Dylan Sampson is a guy back there. You have Harold Landry out there making plays. And they just had the defensive rookie of the year. What was his name? Swearinger.
I think you got it. It's
So,
Swearinger, yeah.
I don't think it's Swearinger, something, but
I'll look it up real quick.
I think the Browns team is good. I still know Todd Buck is a really good coach, so that's kind of be where it all kind of falls down.
I mean, Toddy, you were pretty close. It's Carson Swessinger. So
Swessinger,
very close.
there we go.
Tough last name. So congrats to him. He won the award and prevented James Pierce from winning the award and then doing what he ultimately did.